Hey everyone, this is Animation Review, and as you can see, I've got a new look. Now you may be wondering why am I wearing a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey. Well, it's because they're in the Stanley Cup playoffs and I want to root for them since they're my favorite team. Now with that out of the way, let's get on to today's topic. The top 10 worst animated films I've ever seen. Keep in mind that this is my own opinion and you don't have to agree with me. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. Number 10. The Smurfs. Now before I say anything, I know what most of you are gonna say. But Nathan, this isn't an animated movie, why is it on your worst list? Well, dear viewer, let me explain. Most of the movie is animated, from the Smurfs, the village, to Gargoyle's cat. Now, back to the movie itself. Even though this movie made a whopping 560 million cha-ching, I don't think it really deserves it. The camera always moves, which is annoying. The actors look like they're not even trying, except for Gargamel, and the Smurfs just look ugly. All I can say is that it was a good thing that I didn't get to see the sequel. Number 9. Despicable Me 3. Now, I'm sorry, I know this movie made over $1 billion at the box office, but this movie just annoys me. The biggest issue that I have with this movie is the mess of its story. There's too many side plots to focus on and it really messes up the story. It's really hard to focus on one plot when there's so many side plots in the way. Also, I hope I'm not the first to say this, but the minions are officially overused. They are so overused, in fact, that they're the official mascots of Illumination. Just take a look. Illumination! Because they're so overused, that just makes the minions extremely annoying, but luckily they're not in the movie all that much. Also, Gru's brother Drew isn't that appealing, because he can get pretty annoying sometimes. Now the last thing I want to say about this movie before I move on to the next, is that the animation is actually very good. Every detail looks nice, the character animation's pretty smooth, overall it's a very good animation. But unless you're a Despicable Me fan, I recommend passing on this movie. Number 8. Okay, this movie definitely annoys me more than Despicable Me 3, mainly because of the movie's characters. They are so hateable, which makes the movie extremely mean-spirited and just makes the movie not fun to watch. I mean, in this scene, Surly wants to do everything his own way.
Okay, we get a crew, we break in, but we do it my way.
Because Surly is such a hateable character, sometimes you actually want to root for Raccoon, the supposed antagonist of this movie. Like, oh, I just can't stand Surly. He's so annoying and hateable. Also, the humor is very juvenile and just relies on fart jokes and all that. But I can give the movie some credit for its non-broken story and some pretty decent animation. But other than that, this movie is not gonna be a fun time. Number 7. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. Now before I talk about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, let me talk about the first movie. Now the first movie in my opinion was okay. I mean, some of the humor was pretty good. The animation's not terrible, it's just a little obnoxious. Overall the movie was fine, but the sequel really dropped in quality. The story feels like a deja vu, the animation can get way too over the top sometimes, and overall it's just not really enjoyable. It's just kind of boring sometimes. And this mainly comes from the story being a deja vu experience, which is why, in my opinion, I think this movie isn't that good. And some of the characters can be very annoying sometimes. Like, I wasn't a big fan of Chester V, and some of the characters can get super obnoxious. In my opinion, stick with the first movie. Number 6. Cargo. Before I say anything, I'm just gonna let you guys know that there's gonna be some movies that SaberSpark reviewed, and I decided to watch them myself, and they're pretty bad. Which is the reason Cargo was on this list. Now the story isn't bad, and neither are the characters, but in my opinion, the biggest problem with this movie is its animation. The fact that this movie was made in 2017 shocks me, because for its time, the movie is absolutely terrible. I don't understand how this movie could be made in 2017 and be allowed to be released like this. The lip syncing is terrible, the car's movements are unnatural, and it just looks kinda ugly.
Take some risks and be bold. Okay, I'll do it.
Also, I wouldn't finish about talking this movie if I didn't mention its songs. Number 5.
Leeks and honeydew, baba ganoush and chutney too. Organic sprouts, oh my. I'm thinking of a dinner of tasty hot stir fry. Yes, I say everyone should give it a try.
Just thinking about what to do with this movie. Oh, I know. Should be somewhere here. Ah, here we go. I'll just get my trash can. Ah, here we go. Let me just put it down. Ah! Enough said. Number 4.
What's he doing?
He's making the wrong face!
Oh wow, I didn't expect this movie on this list on the top 10 worst animated films of all time. Wow, what a surprise! So in case some of you weren't fast enough to read the text that just popped up, that was obvious sarcasm because if anyone's a fan of animated movies, everyone should have known this movie was going to be on the list. Because this movie is bad. I mean, really bad. So bad enough that the story completely rips off other movies like Wreck-It Ralph, Lego Movie, Inside Out, and even Sony's own Smurfs: The Lost Village. Not only that, but the characters are unlikable and the humor is just terrible. This movie is nothing but hate ever since the movie was announced, and it shows, because the movie not only rips off other movies, has hateable characters, and unenjoyable humor, but this movie is so bad I only saw this movie once. I didn't even see it twice for this list, because I already know how bad the movie is from everybody else. This movie is a terrible movie and nobody should watch it. Number 3.
No!
Just from that one clip, people are easily gonna know what we're talking about. Yes, people, we are talking about the infamous Joshua and the Promised Land. Now, do we need to mention this movie's problems? The bad animation, the bad voice acting, the weird story. The problems just go on and on and on. But the good thing is that this movie is enjoyably bad. What I mean by that is that it's fun to watch for how bad it is. Plus, this movie was written, directed, and animated by one person. So you can tell he had to do a lot to make this movie. I mean, I'm not gonna hate this guy, but still, this movie is very bad. But like I said before, it was all made by one person. So that's the plus that I'm going to give this movie. But yes, it is still very bad, and you should only watch this movie if you're a critic. Number 2.
I'll make space.
Surprise, surprise! Foodfight is on this list. But what people may not expect is Foodfight being number 2 on this list. I'll get to that in a minute. But yes, I'm going to say what everyone else has said. Foodfight is a bad movie. The story is a complete mess, the characters are all unlikable, the humor is disgusting, and the animation is just terrible. But unlike Joshua and the Promised Land, where it was made by one person, this was made by hundreds of other people in a big company. But unlike Joshua and the Promised Land, it was directed by someone who never had experience with an animated film, and that's why this movie fails. This movie fell into the wrong hands and became one of the worst animated films of all time. Now before we get to number 1, I'd like to mention some honorable mentions. This includes movies that would have made the list but just can't fit, or movies that would have been on the list but I haven't seen them. Hotel Transylvania 2. Now, this movie had the same issue as Cloudy 2. I thought the first movie wasn't bad, but then the second movie really dropped in quality. This movie just felt like one of those generic animated features for the kiddies. And, in my opinion, I think movies should be for the whole family. Anyone can enjoy the movie. But for this movie, it's solely targeted towards kids. Plus, it tries to be hip with kids as well, like cell phones and swagness. Plus, the humor is very juvenile. I say stick with the first one. Minions. Now, as I mentioned with Despicable Me 3, the minions were overused. But in this movie, they had a lot more depth than just being the comedy reliefs. They had their own story, and I really liked that. But the minions can throw some jokes that aren't really that funny. especially when it's focusing on a more serious story. Plus, the humor starts to fail when other characters try to deliver the laughs as well, and their jokes aren't that funny either. But I will say that the animation is gorgeous. It is amazing. The effects are good, the textures look good. It's pretty impressive for Illumination. Ice Age Collision Course. The only reason I saw this movie was to get the credit and then get out. That's literally the only reason I saw this movie. But I didn't see it in theaters though. Now let me ask you guys something. Did we need another Ice Age sequel? No! Even Blue Sky knows this. The plot totally jumped the shark with the whole space theme and all that and all the different side plots. The humor and characters aren't funny, and the animation feels like it's wasted on stupid things. Hopefully we don't have to deal with the 6th Ice Age movie. Hoodwinked Too. Now before I actually talk about the movie, I want to tell you guys an interesting story. During grade 3 or 4, I slept over with one of my best friends, and we actually watched this movie together before we went to bed, and we thought it was awesome. But when I look back at it now, it's not as good as I thought it was. The animation feels like a GameCube video game. The story is turned into a generic buddy cop story, and that makes the characters uninteresting. If I went to see this movie in theaters myself, which I didn't do, I would have rather said, why is this in theaters? This should be a direct-to-DVD sequel. And that is what this movie feels like. Chicken Little. Now, the only reason this movie isn't on this list is that because I have not seen it, and the only reason I will see it is to review it. In fact, when I saw the trailers for it when I was very young, I didn't even want to see the movie, and thank God I didn't, because everyone says it's terrible. Hopefully when I see it, I think it's terrible. And now it's time for the absolute worst. And without a doubt, the #1 worst animated film that I've ever seen is... This list wouldn't be complete without this terrible movie. But before I talk about the movie, let me tell you guys another story. During the time this movie came out on DVD, I was looking for new animated movies to watch, and then my mom said, "Hey, that's a movie you haven't seen, you should watch it." And then I said, "Okay, sure Mom, I'll watch it." So then I decided to watch the movie. But then, I realized something. I made a terrible mistake. The mistake to watch this terrible movie. And that movie being... Norm of the North. There is nothing positive to say about this movie. The story is a complete mess, the humor is absolutely terrible, with the lemmings being minion ripoffs, the animation is terrible, and the characters either have no brain or no purpose. Going back to the story I mentioned, I couldn't even finish 10 minutes of this movie the first time I watched it, and I had to suffer for the terribleness that is Norm of the North when having to rewatch it for this video. So let me go through each of the movie's issues. First off, the animation. Now the animation actually has the same situation as Cargo, where it looks completely terrible for the time that it's made. This movie was made in 2016. If I didn't know when this movie came out, I would have said 2002, not 2016. The next issue, the characters. The characters either have no purpose to the main story, or don't even have a brain. The characters do so many stupid things in this movie. This is the only thing that made me laugh in this movie. And now, the humor. Now I already talked about the lemmings, how they're basically minion ripoffs, and they are. I already said the minions are overrated, now having these things just makes the movie insufferable. Plus, the rest of the humor is just juvenile and extremely annoying gas humor like burps, farts, etc. And then the story makes absolutely no sense. Why do humans want to move in the Arctic? I don't know. The movie doesn't explain. Why is Norm able to talk? Who knows? The movie doesn't explain. The movie doesn't explain anything what's going on in this stupid world. I hate this movie and everything about it. And the worst part about this movie is that the people who made this movie have already made 2 direct-to-DVD sequels. This is what this movie should have been, a direct-to-DVD movie. Unless you're an animation critic, you should never, and I repeat, never watch this movie. I don't understand how anyone would like this movie, and I don't understand how anyone would even have a single laugh. I mean, like I said before, the only reason I laughed was how idiotic the characters are, and I'm just being generous about that. I didn't even smile. I did like a fake laugh like, ha 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 ha. Norm of the North is easily the worst animated film that I've ever seen, and I hope that that title stays that way forever. And that's all I've got for the top 10 worst animated films of all time. Did you agree or disagree with my list? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, this is Animation Review, signing out.